Today we have a movie this afternoon, My Dog Tulip. And Roger thought that it would make a good companion piece for Umberto D because it's also about a man and his dog. And one of the things we wanted to do, we thought might be a little interesting, is have the filmmaker of My Dog Tulip on the panel for Umberto D to sort of contrast this movie and his movie. So first of all, let's bring our moderator out. Again, it's Ignatiy Vishnevetsky.
Hey, folks.
He's going to moderate this Q&A. And let's bring out Paul Fierlinger, of the filmmaker for My Dog Tulip. Also joining us, we decided that we have our far-flung correspondents here again this year. We want to make use of them on the panels. And so we have from Mexico, Gerardo Valero. And also from Chicago, but originally from Pakistan, he was such a great moderator of the panel this morning, Omer Mozaffar. Thank you. And I will give, you're the,
I've got a microphone.
I'll give you a microphone and you'll share it with Gerardo. All right, thank you.
So, hey folks, I'm going to pretend that I wasn't just crying, and seriously, I need to get a dog. My wife is somewhere here in the audience and insists that we keep our two cats, who just aren't the same. So I'll say a few things that normally would go in the introductory remarks for a film like this. Umberto D, it comes at the very end of Italian neorealism, which is kind of, for those of you unfamiliar, hopefully there are quite a few people for whom maybe this is your first time seeing a film that would normally be called an Italian neorealist film. It's a film movement that runs from about 1944 to about 1952, 53, so this is the very tail end. And normally the way it's characterized is that they're films about kind of ordinary, everyday life, cast with non-professional actors. A lot of times people say non-actors, which suggests that the people are playing themselves, which isn't true. There are some professional actors in this film. The landlady, for example, was a well-known actress. But the man who plays Umberto D was a well-known professor of linguistics. So even though he's playing this very kind of down on his luck old man, in reality he was fairly well known. I believe he directed a documentary about something. He published his own magazine. He moved in some pretty big circles. Also, kind of third element is that it's frequently shot on location, and you see quite a lot of use of locations. Part of this film is shot in a studio. The film was directed by Vittorio De Sica, written by Cesare Zavattani. I'm forgetting whether it's an A or an I. It's an A, Zavattani. You see a dedication at the beginning of the film. Vittorio De Sica did produce the film. He did was the impetus behind it. He was one of the producers. You see a dedication to his father at the beginning of the movie. His father, Umberto De Sica, Umberto D, which is where the character gets his name. And the movie was shot by Gerardo, who was a great cinematographer who had an incredibly short career, only about 7 years. He was an actor. He failed as an actor. Then he became a stills photographer for movies. He did promotional stills for movies like Cocteau's The Beauty and the Beast. And then he became a cinematographer. And you can see that he used to be an actor in the way that he photographs people's faces. And there's another thing you can sort of tell from this movie that's part of his career, is that he worked with Orson Welles. He was one of the many cinematographers on Orson Welles' version of Othello. Which this film actually, if you think about it, sort of resembles at times. Visually, there's a lot of low-angle shots. You get these great kind of receding spaces, like, for example, the hospital. So those are the kinds of things I would normally say before the movie starts, but I wanted to get to the movie as quickly as possible. without further ado, let's do some actual paneling, some actual discussing of various things. Yes.
Somebody today at the panel, at the Far Forum correspondent panel, asked me what was the Mexican cinema of the 30s and, or the 40s and 50s, and this is exactly it. The same kind of music, the same down-on-his-luck person, and I think it is because, well, we are talking about Mexico and Italy. We're talking about two third world countries where we see the rich as the evil ones and the poor as the noble ones, even though they are resourceful in trying to solve their problems. And this is exactly what the gentleman that asked me meant. This is the kind of movie.
Well, and I think you can also say that both countries, I think we're also leaving a period of very escapist cinema at one point. I mean, I've seen some Mexican cinema from the 30s, and it is often very kind of, you know, we would say escapist. Italian films from the 30s, there's a beautiful phrase that the Italians would use to describe those films. It was white telephone films, because no one really owns a white phone. It's something that in the popular imagination of 30s Italy, only rich people would have. So it was kind of this idea that, you know, they were films that didn't really play to what happened in people's real lives. And this was partially kind of a reaction against that.
I'm going to violate bro code here. Let's just talk about why we cried. You know.
Let's talk about why we cried.
I mean, throughout the film, I felt that, you know, everyone here seemed to be very emotionally distant, and then I realized that what we're watching are people who are full of dignity. The way they were interacting with each other, the gentleness they had with each other, and so that moment when Umberto D began to beg, I was just devastated. I mean, before the stuff happened with the dog later on, I was gone. And that's why I started crying.
I cry when he hides under the bridge. Mm-hmm. It just gets to me when he tries to hide from the dog, and the dog finds him, and it's the fact that it's in one shot. And you see both of them at the same time. I feel like if that sequence was like a shot of him, shot of the dog, shot of him, shot of the dog, it would not have the same power. But it does, because these things are occurring within the same shot.
Did you expect the dog to find him? I was waiting. Are you going to find him? Are you going to find him? Oh, no, you found him.
Well, I mean, I've seen it before, so I always know the dog is going to find him. I still cry. It doesn't change. Did you cry, Paul?
I left the theater. I was told that I have to be ready to come back. So I caught the ending. I did see the ending on YouTube. I have to say I never saw this film before. So I saw the ending first on YouTube when I was trying to find out, why am I here now? and I have my take on it, which is probably different than yours. I am an old man who has a dog, and I've always had dogs. I've not always been an old man, and looking at the two, the dog wasn't a good actor either. I mean, the dog wasn't a good actor. It was so obvious that they don't belong together, and that bothered me, and that disrupted probably most of the emotions I had, because the way the dog was pulling at the leash, and they really weren't together at all.
Well, it's actually multiple dogs. There's no.
It's even that. Really.
Yeah. If you pay attention, I didn't want. This is also introductory remark material that should actually be saved for the end. That if you pay attention, there are noticeably multiple dogs that play Flicka, because no attempt was made to have all the dogs look the same. They have different markings on their heads, and you can tell them apart. Which dog is trained to do which trick?
This is very interesting because sitting with my wife, she looked at the first and in the program she looked at the picture, at the still picture, and she said, "Look, that's Jack Russell, and we have a Jack Russell." And I said, "Yeah, but I saw the ending, and that's not what the dog looked like, and this explains it now." And and as we were sitting here, then we were whispering to each other, and I kept saying, "This is not a Jack Russell," and she said, "Yes, it is," because So now it's explained. I was sometimes right, and sometimes she was right.
I'm just concerned what they did to that dog to make him look so scared when the train passed by. I didn't see any signs about no animals were hurt in the making of this film.
Well, that wasn't a standard in Italy at the time. You could do whatever you wanted to animals. I'm sure those dogs were really burned. That was a morbid joke. I'm sorry.
I'd like to say something about why I haven't seen this film, even though I know about its existence since the 1950s, where I was in Czechoslovakia in the 1950s and 60s, and it was under the heaviest period of heaviest communism. And foreign films, or particularly films from the West, were never brought in. We were never allowed to see that. We were never allowed to get a peek out into the West. And suddenly this Italian film comes, and it's highly recommended, and reviewers write wonderful things about it. And I lived among filmmakers then. As an animator, I moved in the same circles as live action filmmakers. We went to the same club, we called it. And they always talked in such, with such admiration about this film. And I refused to see it because anything the government would bring in and allow us to watch was suspect to me. And when I found out that it's about these social issues, about an old man who is preparing to commit suicide because he doesn't have enough money, all that, then I said, I am not going to play along into the hands of the communists, and I just refused to watch the film.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, was it partially because most of the people involved in this film were either at the time communists or remained lifelong communists, as most of the people who were involved with neorealism.
Right, that also, I knew about that, and that bothered me too. The thing is, I thought that the film was a current film, a 1950s film, and I was so surprised today to see that it's actually a pre-war film. At first, when I saw all the cars, and Sandra and I were saying, when we saw all these people marching down the street and everything, then we thought we were watching yesterday's film, you know, the Metropolis, when all these men are walking down the street, and it looks so terribly old. And then I thought, well, was it just that they made it look as if it was old? And then I realized, no, this is a kind of film that is done on the street in real time. And so I began to be very curious about that. And if I had known that in 1950, that this is a 1940s or 1930s story to even looks like.
No, I think it is set in the 1950s.
Really?
I believe, yeah.
With those cars and everything, I can't believe it. And there was one question there. Somebody, what?
It's post-war Italy.
Somebody then said, when he says the one guy asked from the bus, do you think there's going to be a war?
But I think that's a general question you can ask at any time, anywhere in the world.
No.
Okay.
Do you think there's going to be a war right now? I mean, that you could seriously just ask that question to a person in the street.
Not after World War II.
But this is, what, 52, 53? It could be Korea. There are American troops stationed in...
No. This is interesting. So are most people here, the loud people, are they on my side or against me? Oh, yeah? Okay. Oh, I feel better. I love to be
Okay, maybe
right.
we should talk about dogs some more.
Let's get back to dogs, which is an important subject.
No, so the I didn't understand what the hole was in the wall. He comes back to his apartment, and his apartment's a mess, and then there's a gigantic hole. I mean, what?
Well, the landlady is turning his room and the room next to it. The room that was previously rented out to the singing woman is being turned into, I believe the maid says it's going to be a large reception room.
Yeah.
You know, which is why she now has the nice maid outfit, because she's married to the owner of, what is it, the Iridium Cinema, I think? Cinema Iride.
No, but I love the fact that when he opened up the drawer in his beat-up apartment, all his clothes were so perfectly folded, so white, and then he put them in his suitcase. But the moment itself was just getting increasingly sad.
Well, as this is a fairly late neorealist film, I mean, you're seeing a lot more studio-based filmmaking. I mean, this is really some amazing production design on this film when you consider the fact that, you know, obviously the street scenes are shot on the streets, but the entirety of that apartment is constructed. I think one of my favorite details is the worn away area above the stove where the maid strikes the match, where it's made to look like someone has been striking matches there for like 15 years and it's actually scratched away into the wall. Which is kind of, that's what I was kind of trying to get at, because at the very beginning when I made a very brief, very vague, and slightly scattershot introduction about how I tend to see this film as a collaborative effort. I don't tend to see it as a Vittorio De Sica film, probably because so many of the films De Sica started making very soon afterwards are, you know, 180 degrees from this. You know, something like After the Fox is pretty much unimaginable. It's directed by the same guy who made, you know, Umberto D or Shoeshine or whatnot.
Why do you think he didn't give his dog the piece of cake if he didn't want it?
Because
Did you wonder about
what
that?
if it's chocolate cake? Chocolate's bad for dogs.
Not when you're in that condition.
I have to admit that my first introduction to Vittorio De Sica was in a bit part in Andy Warhol's Dracula. And so that affected everything as I was watching this. So I was pleasantly surprised by what we saw.
He was actually a fairly good actor, though, Vittorio De Sica. He's in a very good Roberto Rossellini film, General della Rovere, where he plays the lead role. This is our first of 2 dog-themed movies, our first of 2 Rossellini-related movies of the festival, and our first of 2 Orson Welles-related movies. It's the first of many twos.
A nexus between all of these dimensions.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody understands. Isabella Rossellini does a part in our film about, she plays a veterinarian.
Yes, who is the daughter of Roberto Rossellini, for whom the director of this film acted. I think we should open the floor up for questions, otherwise we're going to keep talking about dogs and crying. Who has questions? We have microphones. Some of them look like clown noses. They're big. It's that one. That's the clown nose one.
If it were a pre-war movie and it's set in Rome, we would have seen fascist iconography. Not even the police were wearing fascistic outfits. This was a post-war movie.
Really?
It's one for my team.
I think at the beginning I heard a siren, like you know, when, telling you that there's going to be a bombing or something.
I'm telling you, it's a post-war film. Everything is priced according to post-war inflation, 18,000 lira. And Rome looks pretty bombed out and terrible.
I was in Europe in the late 1940s and 50s, and there were a lot of old cars around, of course, after the war. But I had never seen so many old cars without a single new one. I really doubt. I wasn't in Italy, of course, in the 1940s, or right after the war. I have my doubts that there would be only those old cars there on the streets. But I don't know the detail about the soldiers and the police. Again, would there be soldiers? There were soldiers there. Would they be in uniform like that in 19?
I believe someone with an iPhone has solved this mystery.
Sorry, go ahead, it's on. I think I thought that it was pre-war as well. But I think Ignatiy is right. No, it has to be post-war for a variety of reasons. One of them, no black shirts, and you're not going to have that sort of demonstration in pre-war 1934 to 1938, pre-war Italy with Mussolini. You know, he's not going to let those people march up into the public officials.
True.
That is, Also, and so that's another reason. And I think the trams are relatively post-war trams as well. When we see the cars, there are only 2 or 3 old cars that we see, but we keep on seeing the same ones, so they might have used those ones. And the cinema, the marquee of the cinema and everything, looks very American. And I think it was the American influence that went into the architecture in post-war Italy as well. And finally, you've got the army. They're not wearing their pre-war fascist uniforms. They're wearing Italian uniforms. And also, as Vittorio De Sica, he is commenting with the whole, which one of the soldiers impregnated her, and obviously this is a commentary on the way that the army was with American backing, because they were trying to make sure that Italy was kept non-communist, the way that the Italian army was almost raping the country, and there seems to be a commentary on that with that as well. So all those things put together, I think Ignatiy is right.
I agree. Those are very good points.
I have a good legal team.
Yeah, those are very good.
Yeah.
Good. I agree.
Yeah.
Everything made sense as you label them now.
Thank you very much.
I totally agree. It must be post-war.
Yeah.
But in that case, what's with this neorealism? If they had to bring in old cars and everything, why wasn't it acted out as a current 1950s film?
I think those were the cars that they had, but the budget that they must have had was like they had to use whatever cars that they had available. But if you look at, for example, I mean, Turkey was much poorer at that time than Italy, but in a better shape in certain ways because we never entered the war, for example, okay? And if you look at the cars in Turkey, even in Istanbul, to look at the pictures going into 1955 to 1957, just before Ford came into Turkey and started mass producing cars, they are very, very old cars. So if it was like that in Turkey, it must have been like that in war-ravaged Italy as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, somebody pointed out there are American Jeeps visible.
Oh, there we go.
That is true, and I noticed that.
Yes.
Yes. I pointed that out to my wife. I said, look, those are real American Jeeps.
The red microphone.
The red microphone.
Okay, I really like the movie. I would have a lot of things to say. I'll limit a few. The obelisk in the Colosseum, we have freighted grandeur that is sort of looked at by the camera, but turned away from, ignored. We have the faded grandeur of Umberto D, and sort of the glory, ignoble glory of the maid. The outside shot, the final shot is outside. It's in the park. The park is supposed to be a place of play, of relaxation, and it's a place of terror and fright. The inside shots are equally menacing, it seems to me. We're looking through the broken wall towards the tenant who's being ejected. And so there's something about the good characters coming together, Flake, Umberto D, the maid. There's a nobility, a generosity, a gentility there. And yet it's threatened in so many places. The interior, which is supposed to be a place of safety and privacy, and then we go outside and we get no closure there. It all ends on this midnight cowboy note, and maybe you could all talk about that midnight cowboy note, which is in more movies than Midnight Cowboy and Umberto D.
Well, let me start by saying two things. I think that Umberto D is the closest that a neorealist film gets you could say to psychodrama. It's the most, I think, psychological in terms of how it's framed and edited out of all the neorealist films. I would actually argue that there is no interior space in the film, in the sense that everywhere because the film is essentially built around Umberto D's perspective, everywhere he goes is a public space. Even his bedroom. I think we never really see it as being we never really see a time when it's really his private bedroom. That was some point in the past. Whenever we see it in the film, it's constantly being invaded in one way, or whether it's kind of a benign invasion like the maid stepping in, but his door is not locked. People come in. When he leaves, he comes back, the room is repainted. And even when he goes to the hospital, he's in a room with hundreds of other people. There's no real sense of interior, or that there is any interior or private space that exists anywhere in the film for that character.
Yeah, I mean, as I was watching this film right from the beginning, I immediately started thinking of Egypt. Egypt right now, or Egypt up till the revolution. We'll see which way things take place. But this idea that you're always being watched seemed to be present to me as we were watching this film, related to the fact that there's no private space, but just this sense that you have to be cautious about how you conduct yourself. And this took, even though this film is 60 years old, I felt like I was watching something taking place literally in Cairo right now. It was very powerful for me from that perspective. Yeah.
Let's take another question. Or
From the balcony?
From the balcony, okay, where is that? I can't really see that. Oh, I see it, yellow mic.
Just had a question on the gal that played the maid. Did she have a further career?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. Wait, I think someone actually does have the answer to that question, it sounded like. An iPhone! That's, you know what, let's just do away with panels. We should just all sit with iPhones up here, and you get a really good signal back here. It's not like back there. But do you have an answer, gentlemen with an iPhone?
So she did have a career afterwards.
Worked till 1997. So that's quite a, what, 44 years. That's a long career. Can we take one more question? We'll take one more question then.
I'm Jerry's wife, and I would like to ask him if he noticed some like difference between Godfather times and this movie, like the characters, the timing, and or what do you all think?
Well, when I mentioned that there are many similarities to Mexican movies, you see the traditions. We Mexicans have a lot of traditions. We have the same religion, but in this case, even though the time frame is the same, or so we believe, the concept of family in this kind of movies and in The Godfather are quite different. Well, maybe the girl was his family.
But that's actually a good observation. You're right. You know, I'd never really thought about that. There is no actual family that we ever see. I mean, for anyone, the girl is alone. The landlady is just getting married, but that we never really get a sense of her relationship. The only time we see children, they're not accompanied by their parents. They're accompanied by a maid. It does seem like the most kind of what should be the most basic units of society are kind of fractured within this film and taken apart.
Yeah, I mean, the only family I can remember was at the end when he tried to give them the dog, and there we had the mother who was very.
No, but that's actually the maid.
Oh,
that's
that was
not
the
the
maid.
mother. Yeah.
Oh, okay. My mistake.
Or the nanny. I believe, and not the mother, because she comments that the girl's mother will not want the dog. Well, I believe that's all the time we've got. Thank you all so much. And we are. My dog Tulip is next, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes. My dog Tulip starts at 3 o'clock, I believe. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, in that case, we need to clear this stage and get it ready. Thank you, folks.